From Trump bump to Trump slump. So Trump hits the stump. I apologize for that. My name is Bill Salmon. I'm joined by my old pal Chris Steyerwalt, author of Whole Hog Politics on thehill.com. Chris, happy Friday. Everybody's working for the weekend. By the way, who did that song?
Loverboy?
Yes.
All right.
Wow.
All right.
And what were the other two notable songs by Loverboy
Oh boy.
that were actually better than that one?
It's like I'm gonna duck it because I'm gonna leave. I'm just gonna say I got that one right and I feel good about it. Because
Yeah,
I feel like I'm gonna veer over into Rick Springfield territory. I've got
Which wouldn't be too far out of
right.
that
No, I
lane.
mean I'm genre correct in this.
Yeah.
But tell
the
me
the other two are Turn Me Loose
yes.
and Lovin' Every Minute of It, which
I would definitely not have gotten that because I would have put that more in the not quite Poison category.
that's
But
more hair metal. Yeah, Poison.
that feels filthier. That feels like a grosser part of rock and roll. But
All right, Chris, we got to talk about politics because your column is a banger this week. I went back on July 3rd. You and I had one of these conversations, and at that time, Trump. We even led off the conversation with this joking about tired of winning yet, because Trump was really on a hot streak. He was five and a half months into his presidency. They had just passed the big beautiful bill, which was really sort of his legislative, signature piece. He was having wins in foreign policy, the Iran strikes, as an example. The Supreme Court was issuing opinions in his favor, including one on injunctions. And everybody seemed to be bending the knee to Trump, whether it was university presidents or NATO heads of state. And now, 5.5 months after that, it just seemed, and by the way, at that time, we even said it's going great for Trump, but it always goes south. Well, it has gone south. I mean, Democrats are winning most of the off-year elections. Republicans are now starting to show signs, finally, of some pushback on Trump. And you saw the latest example yesterday when the Indiana legislature rejected Trump's favored gerrymandering proposal. Trump's poll numbers, and we're going to get into this, are alarmingly low. And now Obamacare is like a Trump problem. So, wow, it turned around like we thought it would. Is this his fate for the next 3+ years, or there are still some more turns in this drama to be played out? There's a lot of football, but can he turn it around again, and how?
well, I mean, let's take the Indiana news. You can certainly blame Trump for this one, but you would probably put more of the blame on Mike Braun, Indiana's governor, who just tried to ram and jam and hammer and threaten. He tried to do what Trump does to Congress, to
the state legislature,
to the state Senate of Indiana.
Yeah.
And a majority of the members of Indiana State Senate said, we are not gerrymandering to try to squeeze out the remaining 2 Democratic seats. Indiana has 2 Democratic districts. One is Indianapolis. The other is Gary, basically. And the plan was we can slice those up in such a way that we destroy the last bit of Democratic representation in Indiana. And the president said you have to do it. And then J.D. Vance made it his pet project, right? J.D. Vance was going to deliver the goods in Indiana, and Mike Braun was going to help him. And you go back to July. You go back to January, February, when Donald Trump, for the only time in his presidency to date, was actually in positive territory. He actually had a net positive approval rating. And the idea that they would say, no, we're not doing it. We're not going to, we won't go along. It's not that it would have been unthinkable, but it would have been, what will the consequences be for these people? And Mike Braun is out today saying, we're going to come and get you. We're going to beat you in your primaries. We're going to crush you. We're going to defeat you. He's being very bellicose. And you think, probably not, right?
Yeah. And it wasn't even really a close vote in the Indiana Senate.
They didn't even get a Hastert rule kind of victory where there was a little holdout of Republican state senators. It was half of the delegate, or half of the conference. And there will be consequences for some of those senators, but the idea that Mike Braun could leverage up Donald Trump's power to say to people who many of them have represented these districts in Indiana since, for a dozen years or more, and then say to them, I will come and crush you in a primary for not doing a thing, remember, that is unpopular.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the undecided senators, how big of a nerd am I? As I was putting the note together, I'm live streaming the Indiana Senate, and it was not quite Daniel Webster, but it was a kind of legislation and kind of legislative activity that we don't get to see much in Washington anymore. And I listened to one senator talk about his constituents don't want to be drawn into new congressional districts. They like their member of Congress. Yeah. They like their district, and they don't want to be districted out of it. And it occurred to me at that moment, when you go to Texas and say, we're going to get these 5 seats, we're going to stick it to these Democrats and we're going to do it. Yes, this feels good. Now, 6 months later, you say, we're probably going to lose the House anyway, but we can tighten the margins if we dissatisfy and disquiet your constituents.
Yeah.
And these folks say, well, if we're going to lose anyway, right? If we're going to lose the House anyway, why should I bother?
Yeah. Why make my constituents angry? You touched on something, Chris. I remember back in 2000, when James Carville, who I have a lot of respect for, was giving a talk at what we call the Sperling Breakfast, the Christian Science Monitor.
They had great breakfast meats. They had great breakfast meats.
They did, and they would have newsmakers in there. And this was I think like 9 months into, or maybe 8 months into George W. Bush's first term, and Carville was saying quite persuasively, he was saying, the thing about Bush is that people in his party don't fear him. They don't fear him, and I thought that was such a stark way to put it. But he was right, and he's talked about how they were starting to push back on him, and he wasn't. There was still questions about in some minds, some questions about his legitimacy because of the recount wars in Florida. But ironically, during that very Sperling breakfast, the planes hit the towers in New York, and as everybody got up to leave, Carville said, "This changes everything." But my question is,
wait! You're not moving off of that without me plugging that book, because you use that as the opening scene of your 9/11 book. Remind me the title?
Fighting Back.
Fighting Back.
Available at your local. No, I'm kidding.
No, it is a superb chronicle of the 9/11 experience and in politics. And you, with a novelist's hand, you cut between scene and scene and scene.
Keep talking.
And no. And it's exceptionally well written, and I love that book.
A very, very poor man's Tom Wolfe, I guess. Very, very poor. But my point is that, are we starting to see? And I'm very careful about asking this question because we've seen so many people say, "This is the one that's going to really get Trump." And I'm not even asking that. I'm asking, are we starting to see a little bit of the fear slip away?
The walls are closing in?
No, not that.
The Donald Trump's greatest asset is that he is a credible threat, and that he will do or say anything. And the way that he keeps his opponents off base is by breaking the rules very often, written or unwritten rules. And I think it was a John Carl book talking about the post January 6th, and the effort to overturn the election and all of that stuff. And the conversation between Donald Trump and Ronna McDaniel, then the chairwoman of the Republican National Committee, where he told her, you will either support my efforts think about that, post-inauguration, my efforts post-inauguration to swipe a second term, or I will start my own party and the Republican Party will be destroyed. And talk about a credible threat, right? Yeah. At that moment where 30 or 40% of the Republican Party was agog and wanted to help Trump steal a second term, and they were totally convinced and they were all in a froth. If Trump would have done that, it would have been incredibly destructive. And Ronna McDaniel couldn't say what you would typically say to a person in that position. Hey, you just lost an election pretty decisively. You just made a fool of yourself. And you can say whatever you want to say, right? You would say to him what the Indiana Senate said to Mike Braun. Cool story, comma, bro. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because it wasn't really clear at that time that he would come back successfully and be have a second term.
But if you're McDaniel, right, and this is why the Senate Republicans wouldn't convict him, because it's like, I don't know.
What if he's still around?
I don't know. And like, we don't want to make his people mad, and his people love him so much. And it's an advantage, disadvantage thing for Trump. I was curious in trying to put some context around this Obamacare debate that is gripping Washington these days. I got weird and started going back and doing averages for Trump's approval rating at different points in both terms. And what I found was the last time it was this bad wasn't post January 6th. It was first year. It was December of year one, when year one was a failure, right?
2017.
Yep. Year one of term one. And it's ending in a shutdown. The first year ends in what had previously been the longest government shutdown in history. Trump had done it himself. Yep. And people were very upset. But then here's the thing. This is interesting. This is the fascinating thing about Trump. He was never very popular to begin with in his first term, right? He came in, Obama left as, mid. He was like, Obama left office 4 points underwater or something. It was a middling level of popularity as he left. Trump came in well underwater. And so his fall to a level not as low as it is now, but his fall to the end of the year, which took him down into the mid to high 30s. I think he was 38% average approval, was short, relatively speaking. He only had to go 13 points or so to get down to the cellar.
Right.
This time he came in, the only time, as I said, that he has to date had net positive approval. So he came in like a normal president this time. And he came in with a little bit of a honeymoon, and he came in with good vibes, thanks to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, right? People were fatigued, fed up, annoyed. They were ready for change, and they remembered the good part of Trump. When the 2018, 2019, when his numbers recovered after he got some religion after skunking up the first year. And they remembered that Trump, and he came in with high expectations, net positive territory. The fall from +4 to minus 25, no, worse than
29.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. It was a rocket ride to the cellar for him. But
so just to compare 2017, which was the first which was the first year of his first term, to 2025, which is the first year of his second term, you're saying that to this point, the first time around, he went down 13 points. This time around, he's gone down 25 points, basically double the descent in terms of being underwater.
Twice as deep.
Twice as deep. Okay.
But this is the important context. It doesn't affect who he is in politics, because he is now, one way to think about it is, he is lower, yes, than he was before. That is true. But with his core supporters, he's still there, right?
Yeah.
He's starting to lose Republicans at the margin, and we should talk about how that affects Obamacare, and that discussion. But Trump has never sought to be a majority kind of guy, right? He is an intense plurality is where he resides politically. That makes him very powerful in Republican politics because it gives him the wrecking ball he needs in primaries to be that credible threat. But it's not going to ever make him Mr. 60%. That is an asbestos shield around him because he can say to Republicans, I will crush you. I will ruin you. And if you try to break up with me, right? If you try to distance yourself from me, I will come to your district. I will call out the dogs on you and we will wreck you. Marjorie Taylor Greene, a lot of people have a lot of speculation about what exactly Marjorie Taylor Greene did, didn't do, had, didn't have. But one thing is absolutely true. Donald Trump could have, in her district, given the electorate in her district, could have made a very, very strong case that he could wipe her out.
Yeah.
And that is the locus of his power inside the Republican Party. So even if he's at 36%, right, he can still say to Republicans, but I'm at 90% in your district and I will come and eat your lunch.
In other words, you don't break up with a bunny boiler. Right?
That's right. Exactly.
As
the
Michael
credible
Douglas
threat.
learned when
That's
Glenn
right.
Close, and what was the name of that movie?
Fatal Attraction. How do you not know the
Attraction.
name of Fatal
Fatal
Attraction?
Attraction.
You're over here asking me about Loverboy. You can't. If we're doing dated references as we always do, if we're just doing the pop culture references of the 80s and 90s, you got to come with Fatal Attraction.
I always get Fatal Attraction mixed up with Basic Instinct, even though they were sort of the same era. You know what I'm saying? And with femme fatales.
The Fatal Attraction, Basic Instinct is to Fatal Attraction as Great White is to Loverboy.
Oh, wow. We're going to take some time to unpack that later. Chris, you mentioned Obamacare, and one line really jumped out at me from your column today. You talk about Trump and this dilemma he faces with extending the credits on Obamacare. And you say this about Trump. He's got just a few weeks to decide which is more unpalatable, accepting Obamacare or kissing off the midterms. I mean, that's pretty stark. So you're basically saying Trump would have to sort of admit, Trump, who has been an opponent of Obamacare, would have to say, geez, for my political fortunes and for the fortunes of my party, I guess I'm going to have to swallow this, and let's just go ahead and extend the subsidies rather than because otherwise, we're talking about in a matter of weeks, the premiums are like doubled for a lot of people?
In many cases. And who are those people? I repeat it often, but the reason that this is such a potentially politically cataclysmic thing for Republicans, who are they? The people who are right in the blast radius of this increase are 55 to 65. They're people who retired early or lost their jobs, but who are out of the kind of work that provides health insurance. And they're using the Obamacare exchanges as a bridge to Medicare. Who do those people sound like? Those people sound like voters to me. That's who those people sound like.
Right.
Highly
likely to turn out.
Yeah, you cut Medicaid as Republicans did. There are consequences because of the Obamacare expansion of Medicaid. So there's more higher propensity voters, more sort of the working class. It's, I think, 130 or so percent of the poverty line.
In fairness, Republicans would say they cut the waste, fraud, and abuse.
Less Obamacare. What is definitely true is that less money will go out in Medicaid funding. Now, the Republicans say that it won't affect anyone who is a good American because they're only going to do waste, fraud, and abuse. But they have dropped the hot coals in the governors and state legislatures' laps and said, good news, you're going to eliminate, quote, waste, fraud, and abuse. And some of that will be easy because there's lots of Medicaid fraud for sure. The Medicaid is rife with fraud and mismanagement. But also, some people are probably going to lose their coverage. Yeah. Some people who meet the criteria are probably going to lose their coverage. And so those people who lose their coverage are lower propensity voters because they're poor or poorer. These Obamacare folks who are in the individual exchanges who are going to get, I mean, we're talking about $1,000 a month increase. If you are a person who has said, okay, this is how I'm going to get to Medicare. This is my bridge. I'm going to use this. And so I don't have to find a terrible job. What did Nancy Pelosi say? Freed from work. For the people who are freed from work and don't have to go get a job they don't want, so they can get health insurance and they can bridge the gap over. So here we're talking about millions of people at any given time. And these are very high propensity voters. They're older and they're more affluent, and they're going to come and club Republicans over the head for this. And if I was Donald Trump, well, if I was Donald Trump, I wouldn't be president, because I would be just rich and happy somewhere, and I wouldn't be arguing with people all the time. But if I was Donald Trump, I would say to the Republicans who want me to dive in on a plan to extend Obamacare subsidies to try to save the midterms, I would say, fellas, it looks like the midterms are already gone. I don't think you're going to keep the House, and it doesn't help me, right, to put my fat in the fire on this. And because remember, for this to work, for the Republicans to actually extend the Obamacare subsidies, Trump will have to bless it personally. He will have to say, this is the plan that I want, because otherwise the House is, Mike Johnson is never going. He said it today. He says it again and again and again. He's not going to bring anything forward that Donald Trump has not specifically sanctioned and said is the approved Trump version of this. Johnson says he doesn't want to do it at all, but you and I and everyone knows that if Donald Trump says, actually, it's not Obamacare anymore, it's the Trump Gold healthcare plan, and
rebrand it.
It's just rebrand it, Gulf of America, that sucker, and say it's new. And Mike Johnson will say, I love it. I love it. It's a genius plan. But he's not going to do that. He's not going to bow. He will not. The Speaker of the House is not going to bow at this point. I can't imagine that he is going to bow at this point to vulnerable members.
No,
because
to Trump is he going to bow?
As they demonstrated with the in the Texas California redistricting thing, when all those California Republicans were like, "Hey, bro, I don't know if this is a great idea for us," and the answer was, "Meh." Right? Like, life is full of disappointment. We've decided that you're worth it. That losing your seats, your 5 or 6 seats, is worth what we can pick up elsewhere. So go pound sand.
So have a nice day.
Yeah, have a nice day.
Chris, let's pull back from the short-term political dilemma that Trump is facing now about Obamacare. And I'm going to ask this again. We've talked about this before, but I just, in fairness, I got to tell you, I don't know how many times I heard when Obamacare was being debated and when it was being implemented, it was going to bend the cost curve downward. So I ask you again, now with the passage of time, has Obamacare been a failure? I mean, we're talking about government-subsidized health care that now we have to go back to the taxpayers again to kind of bail it out. I mean, did it not work out the way Obama told us it was going to work out?
I don't want to say that it was Bernie Sanders who said it. So I will just say somebody who I now believe was Bernie Sanders. Maybe it wasn't him, but someone maybe it was Larry David. Somebody said at the time of the Obamacare debate, somebody to the left said, it's not what I want, but the best part about this is that it will break the existing system, right? This isn't what I want, because what the left wanted was single payer. And they said, well, if we can't have single payer, we should have a public option. And the public option will be the means by which we interviewed Zeke Emanuel on the Hill Sunday a couple weeks ago, a few weeks ago. And that's his plan, basically, is that it's a public option in which Medicare, it's kind of Medicare for all is another way to say the public option, right? And the argument against the public option at the time was you will destroy the existing employer-based system because employers will dump their folks into government subsidized health insurance. And the answer to that was, well, we'll have mandates. We will require companies that have more than 50 employees to provide subsidies themselves for health insurance programs, or we will punish them at a high enough level. It was a half a loaf for the left, right? Because there wasn't a public option, strictly speaking. There was a subsidized option that was where these subsidies go to the insurance companies, and it's a place for independent people to go, but it doesn't have the kind of full coverage that the left wanted. But go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say. So does that mean that we now have a system? I guess my question is this:
I was getting there.
Was the old system better than what we now have? Was the old employer-focused system better?
I commend to everyone Yuval Levin's great piece. Yuval Levin was part of who is my other boss at AEI, who was part of the team in the Bush administration that was trying to come up with an answer on health insurance, right, and drug costs, because as you will recall, Medicare Part B, all of that stuff. So health insurance and health care costs have been a dominant feature of politics this entire century. And the Republicans have lost every single time, right? They lose again and again and again and again. And Yuval's piece, it's at the Free Press, is like, okay, here's why. Here's the problem. And the problem that Republicans had with Obamacare is they said, we want to repeal it. And they said, okay, for what? And if you remember in the first Trump administration, we would gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger that you would give us today. We want to take the tax cuts now. We want you to vote to repeal Obamacare. And we will come up with a plan. We're going to be very tough on ourselves. We're going to say we must have a plan in 3 years. So we're going to fake repeal it. We're going to take the revenue so that we can fund the tax cuts that we want to fund. And then 3 years from now, we promise, because Congress always does what it says. Whenever it sets a tough deadline for itself, it never fails. Oh, wait a minute, every time. So the argument about Obamacare and your question about costs, Obamacare has certainly distorted the insurance market. And when you subsidize something, costs do not go down. Ask any parent who's trying to pay for a college education right now about the consequences of subsidy through the form of government grants and low interest loans backed by the government, offered by the government. What are the effects of those subsidies on the cost of tuition?
Tuition goes up.
Through the roof, right?
Yeah.
And the same is true in healthcare, which is because of the disconnection, essentially, between the payer, the person who is paying is not the person who is receiving the services. And that is a disconnection that has plagued every American since Harry Truman, right? This is a core problem. If you are a Democrat, you say costs are going up because the government is not. Rand Paul was talking about this the other day. He said, why don't we just, and there are rules from the first Trump term that would allow some of this, say, why don't we let anybody start an association to negotiate for healthcare? Why can't people who are Costco members form a health insurance cooperative and go do it? And the argument is basically, if you're a Democrat and you believe that healthcare is a human right, and it's not that everyone deserves healthcare, it is that everyone is entitled to healthcare. Then you say, I don't care how much it costs, it has to be provided. And if you are a conservative, you're going to say, healthcare is not an entitlement. You are not entitled to get healthcare. It is another good or service in the marketplace of things, like your telephone, like any of the other things that you like food, like any of these other essential things that you rely on. The market has to rule. MAGA, and this is what I was wrestling with, which is MAGA is coming around the corner. You can see the snout coming around the corner. It says, Well, wait a minute. Like, why do we need to be conservative? We're not conservatives, we're national conservatives. And if we're nationalists, then we want to take care of the people.
Yeah.
And if the people want healthcare to be subsidized, we should be subsidizing healthcare. And the problem is that the MAGA lag, so the Congress is not as is there's still a ton of conservatives in Congress. And the nationalists in Congress are there and they are loud. But Mike Johnson isn't even really a nationalist per se. He's a conservative who really likes Donald Trump a lot and owes Donald Trump a lot. But John Thune isn't a nationalist. He's a conservative.
Yeah.
And the
But
resistance.
when you have a populist as president, these are the tensions that arise, right?
Exactly.
In the Republican Party.
Exactly.
Chris, we're almost out of time. I just want you to briefly touch on this idea that Trump is getting out on the stump, and he was in Pennsylvania the other day. He's going to be going to other places. Is that going to help? Because you wrote in your column today, and by the way, I haven't mentioned this yet. Of course, you and I both work at The Hill.
True.
And at News Nation. You,
True.
of course, are the only author of Whole Hog Politics, but which is available. And if you scan the QR code that is on the screen right now, you will be able to receive Whole Hog Politics for free. But will it work to go out on that stump and try to correct the falling poll numbers and all the other things that are making him have a bad streak right now, if you will?
Well, what matters ultimately most for Republican chances, I would imagine, the president currently has 15% approval among independents on his handling of the economy.
Oh boy.
So what you'd figure, and even I pointed out that his lowest numbers with Republicans are on healthcare, which is what points to why I think the snout is coming around the corner and they're gonna sniff their way into some sort of Obamacare extension. But those numbers, if you're 15% on handling of the economy with independents, which is just mostly a way, it's imperfect, but that's a lot of persuadable voters there.
Right.
And
that's a big data point right there.
It's a big data point. And so will the Supreme Court, as many expect, strike down the tariffs? When do the Trump...
which, by the way, would make Trump angry, but might help Trump.
Yeah,
right? Because it would reduce prices.
You've talked to plenty of Republicans in Washington, D.C. who would not say it publicly, but they really want Donald Trump to lose his tariff case.
Right.
For a lot of reasons. Yeah. And for
their benefit.
And this is another example of the inherent tension between Trump and his party, which is it would be in the interests of every Republican member of Congress for the Supreme Court to say, absolutely not. President can't just declare emergencies and impose taxes.
We're undoing these tariffs.
We're undoing these. It would be an economic boom. It would be.
I mean, it would be complicated to unwind it, and it would be a mess. But if the
there's
prices
so much,
went back down,
oh my gosh, there's so much money on the sidelines. So many companies that haven't known what to do, and it would be complicated to unwind. But baby, the money would be pouring in. And investment would go up and consumer prices would come down and people would feel great about it. And it would be like, that we had that weird 10 months where...
And by the way, this would be happening right when we talked about the big, beautiful bill. Well, guess what? Those tax cuts that were in that bill are about to hit in the new year. So if that hits and then the tariffs start to go away, who knows? Maybe he does pull out of this.
And it's not... Well, so I guess that was your original question. And so, look, on the question of Trump campaigning, if you keep him busy and you don't send him places where it hurts more than it helps, whatever. It gives him something to do. He gets to feel involved in something, and it also keeps him from probably getting real depressed, right? Because 26 is going to be an unhappy year for Republicans in a lot of ways, and so you can send him to places. They sent him to the Poconos. You can send him to the Poconos, right? There's no statewide election. I don't think there's a contested statewide election in Pennsylvania. If you find districts in places where he's popular and he's not going to affect the statewide race, you got to keep him out of Georgia. You got to definitely keep Donald Trump out of Georgia. for sure if you're a Republican. And then if you cherry pick and find the places around the country where he could help, maybe in a district.
He has a very good political team. I mean, they should be able to figure this
And
out.
right. And if you find districts like the one in Tennessee that Afton Bain just lost, right? You find those places, send him out. And as long as it doesn't touch a statewide, as long as it doesn't touch a Senate race, it's probably okay. I don't know whether they can discipline him in that way to cherry pick the right places, but maybe it's an okay idea. Just if all it did, and we've seen this with other presidents, if all it does is keep him busy and make him feel good,
maybe that's a plus.
Yeah, maybe that's a plus. But your original, the question here was, can it be turned around? I believe that Donald Trump's sharper fall, right?
Yeah.
No president has ever come back, right? Right? There's no story about a second term comeback. Donald Trump could be the one, but you can look at how they all go. Once you're down and voters have made up their mind about you, you can come back a little. You can look at Barack Obama, right? He came back. He dragged it by its lower lip up to re-election in 2012, right? And then there's no honeymoon phase after you reelect, right? You don't get it. Trump got it because it was a weird reelect. There was this interregnum. But the amount of verticality that you can have, I think Trump used his bump.
Well, what about the cynics who say that, who speculate that maybe Trump looks at all of the troubles and the domestic, problems he's having with his polls and whatnot, and says that now's a good time for a war with Venezuela. Now, I personally don't think Trump. I say what you will about Trump. I think he actually has a conviction that he just will not put boots on the ground. That he just doesn't want to do that. But could he do some kind of a what do you call military? Something like a Vietnam. It wasn't a declared war, but we're going to, do more airstrikes or something like that. Is that
when they come
too cynical?
When they come and tell you this one's going to be easy, right?
Yeah.
This one.
That's when you start to worry.
This one, baby, it's going to be easy.
This is the one.
This is the one. This is Grenada, right? This is an easy. We'll go in. We'll do a little stuff. It'll look good. We're in.
Although
and we're
out. with the airstrike in Iran, we
right,
kind of pulled that off.
But the difference,
a quickie.
The difference here, of course, is that the United States is not doing a single airstrike against Iran. Yeah. We're killing a lot of Venezuelans who are cocaine traffickers. We're doing that, and we're effectively blockading now.
Yeah, seizing oil tankers.
Yeah, we're seizing oil tankers. So this is war stuff, right? We're doing war stuff. One strike, you can say, "Whoa, we did one thing. We said don't do it, and then we did the one thing, and then we walked away. There's no war." This is gunboat diplomacy at best, or a regime change effort in Latin America. And I don't know whether you know this, but the United States does not have a sterling record when it comes to regime change efforts in Latin America. The Castros offer their condolences. So I guess I would say the president's critics say that everything that he does is a distraction from something else, right? Well, the reason he's doing this is because of the Epstein files. Well, the reason he's doing this is because of the affordability crisis. The reason he's doing this because whatever. Let's remember the credible threat. The thing that makes Donald Trump work, has made him work as a political entity, is you don't know what is going to happen next, right? Right. And if you would have said 2 months ago, I bet we're going to start a war with Venezuela, or 3 months ago, whenever the strike started in September, I think we're going to go to war with Venezuela. If you would have said that in July, you would have said, no, we're not going to start a war. I mean, you get into regime change and you end up with problems, and then the Latin Americans are upset and blah, blah, blah. But it's a bigger problem than just Venezuela, and Trump's against boots on the ground. And now we're like, okay, here we go. We're doing it.
It's feeling warish.
It's feeling war. It's war adjacent. And look, I don't think it's a distraction effort. I think that this is a project that Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, and a lot of people in South Florida,
Have
Cubans,
been wanting to do for a while.
because Cuba's friend is Venezuela and Venezuela's friend is Cuba. It's the key part of this long leftover Cold War coalition. And I think the belief is that if you can cripple the Maduro government in Venezuela, that you will cut Cuba off and the oil and all this other stuff, and that they will finally be able to take out the Castro regime, and then something. And it's all possible. But I would just say it isn't a distraction, because if you are facing $1,000 increase in your monthly health insurance bill, you will not say, but at least there's the war with Venezuela.
At least the foreign policy is going well. It actually very rarely impacts the domestic polls.
It rarely.
Well, I mean, like look, obviously 9/11.
Right. Or the Iraq War.
Iraq War, but then they go down quite quickly.
Or Israel. Or there are places where there's enough.
You get a sugar high.
Well, a sugar high or a sugar low, right?
Yeah.
Joe Biden in Afghanistan.
Right.
People care about foreign policy.
Right. But in the long term, it's their pocketbook. It's right. That's what.
It's that 15% independent approval on handling of the economy. And no matter how upset Donald Trump can make people about starting undeclared wars against Latin American regimes, he can get people as upset as he wants about it. But that is not, no one is going to say, I forgot about how I don't have any money left over at the end of the month. Yeah. And that's the pinch point. And so I will just shut up by saying Donald Trump cannot turn it around. But if the economy turns around, right? And one of the things to never discount with Donald Trump is he takes so many risks. Sometimes they pay off.
Yeah.
And he's been very lucky at many, the guy who's lost a chunk of his ear to an assassin's bullet. He has been very, very lucky many times. And you get a robust economy, you get a big turnaround, and inflation is under control, and it all starts clicking next year. I'm not saying Republicans keep the House. I'm not saying they keep the House, but I am saying you get a meh and not a tsunami.
Yeah. Hey, that's all the time we have for this week. Again, I am Bill Salmon, joined by my old pal, Chris Steyerwalt. We will see you next time on another edition of Whole Hog Politics.